years, I've been confounded by the conundrum that is our educational system. We all know that our educational system is fraught with many challenges. But how can we as a society mitigate some of those challenges of learning so that we can be relevant in the global economy? My answer for this is science. But let me take you back to the focal place of learning, the classroom. What are the barriers of learning that we find there? There's rote memorization. Subjects are taught on a superficial rather than a conceptual level. We have poorly trained teachers. We are definitely textbook reliant. There's lack of practical learning in the classroom. And reasoning and questioning are not encouraged. Now, all of this leads to poor learning outcomes as learning becomes difficult, uninteresting, and demotivating. But let's deconstruct this further and see, how does learning take place in our society? What is our relationship to learning? Learning, in a word, is stressful. Students are in a state of constant tension when it comes to their learning, and so are their parents, who either don't have the requisite knowledge or understanding to help them, or they're consumed by the societal vortex of pressurizing them to get the right grades, get into the right schools, and get the right results. For all of this, our solution is to outsource. We look for extra classes and tuitions. Therefore, we end up either being divorced from our children's learning, that is, we've delegated it, or in a state of constant tension. Now, studies indicate that all of this leads to our children becoming dependent learners who rely on others for content material and explanations. Our educational system, as we all know, is extremely teacher-centric and therefore proactively discourages us from asking questions. We are born as curious and inquisitive beings. On average, a toddler will ask 100 to 300 questions daily. But as they grow older, the numbers of questions decline, and so does their wonder and curiosity. So how do we become part of the solution to the problem? How do we help ourselves and our children prepare for the future? Children spend 14% of their time in schools. So the majority of the learning and socialization takes place elsewhere. But in our society, it's the formal educational institutions, the schools, the colleges, the universities, that face the brunt of this pressure to churn out these capable, diligent, and intelligent human beings who are prepared for the workforce. This creates its own challenges. Because what's missing here is 21st century learning to take place. It is not information that we need, but spaces that can broaden our horizons and refine our concepts and our ideas. Spaces that can help us formulate our own opinions and help us to interact and engage with people from different backgrounds with disparate skills and experiences. Spaces that can help us apply some of the knowledge and information that we've learned in our classrooms into our daily lives. We cannot expect for formal educational institutions to provide for all of this. And it is informal educational spaces that support educational institutions and communities to provide for those skill sets and those exposures. But what is informal learning spaces? Informal learning is unstructured, and it takes place away from formal traditional settings like classrooms. It often has no goals, no objectives, and is unplanned, and takes place that's self-directed by the learner. Examples of such spaces are museums, centers, galleries, theaters, playgrounds, parks. But what benefits do these informal learning spaces provide as compared to educational institutions? For one, there's access to all. You can go with anyone. your parents, grandparents, colleagues, friends, teachers, business partners, dates, and with your as tourists. There's no enrollment required, no pressure of exams, and there's no previous requisite or standard of education needed. But the most important thing is it requires free choice learning. That is, it's up to you what you want to learn. And lastly, it also allows for multi-generation learning to take place. That is, parents and families can also be proactively engaged in learning. And of course, it's fun, engaging, interactive, and experiential. At the Dawood Foundation, we realized that there's a dearth of such informal learning spaces in Pakistan, but especially in Karachi. But what kind of informal public learning spaces do we need for our future? In order for our society to progress and for us to realize the issues that we face and where the world is headed, we need science. Science and scientific thinking ticks most, if not all, the boxes of the skills that we need. It promotes analytical and critical thinking, observation, experimentation, and reasoning. It teaches us how to explore, how to investigate, how to predict, how to see logic and see the cause and effect. It encourages curiosity and asks us to do exactly what we're not supposed to do in the classroom. Ask questions. How is this made? What is the cause? Why does it react? And it comes to the core of what we need if we want to progress. Because the world's most pressing issues today are science-based, whether it's climate change, food security, water allocation, energy transitions, population, pollution, poverty, mass extinction, and so forth. But in order for us to address these issues, we need to do it at a national as well as a global level. So therefore, it is imperative that we as a nation become scientifically literate so we can push for the right policies and invest in the right solutions. But in Pakistan, science is the domain of the intelligent. You need to be smart enough, proficient enough, have the right grades if you want to opt for science subjects or pursue a career of science. But if we want to progress, we have to realize that science has to be understandable by everyone, adults and children alike. I came to these realizations one day as I was watching a cartoon about this curious monkey in a museum with my children. They turned to me and said, "We want to go here." And I realized there was nowhere I could take them in Karachi. So our vacations became about visiting museums, especially science ones. I developed a voracious appetite for such spaces because what I saw was my children and other families and other people enjoy the process of learning and of interacting with exhibits. After visiting 45 science museums and centers worldwide, my heart and mind was set. I was deeply disturbed that in our country of 228 million, of which 35% are under the age of 15, have limited exposure to such spaces and are bereft of the joys of learning. It is for this reason we decided to build a science center, a place where basic science is demonstrated in interactive ways using daily life examples that are culturally relevant. We began our journey in 2016 with a temporary exhibition, 3-day temporary exhibition at a girls' school. We called it MagnifiScience. We wanted to experiment and see if the people of Karachi would be interested, and they were. They came in droves. We did this again the next year, bigger, double the size, and again, Karachi responded fervor. We took TDF MagnifiScience exhibition to Ghar, an impoverished desert region, and again, the response was the same. The same desire for discovery and excitement for exploration. We realized the solution did not lie in temporary spaces. What we needed was something permanent. Therefore, today we've established TDF MagnifiScience Centre, Pakistan's first contemporary science center solely for the purpose of science popularization and imbuing science capital in our people. We hope that this will inspire the thinkers, the innovators, the scientists, and the problem solvers of tomorrow. The purpose of my talk here with you is to share some of my learnings as well as some of my hopes. I believe that learning opportunities can be inclusive and can be accessible to everyone, irrespective of age, gender, ethnicities, ethnographic communities, socioeconomic status, and disabilities. We know that there's a dearth of science learning in our people, not because of lack of desire, but because of lack of opportunities. We also see that given the right opportunities, different generations can facilitate each other's learning. We see this daily at MagnifiScience Centre, where parents and grandparents and children work together to solve a maths puzzle together, or see the science behind a dam. My hope here is that by popularizing scientific thinking, we will be able to have more logical, coherent, and tolerant discussions, and that it will give us another frame of reference other than religion to construct our arguments. I also hope that museums and science centers the world over, which reflect the culture and society and innovations, also populate our landscapes so that we have this network of learning. Because at the end of the day, what we need is to bridge those learning gaps between our families and ethnicities and socioeconomic groups so that we can have better, more meaningful and constructive conversations about our futures and the problems that we face. Thank you.